Hey there, my people. Welcome. Thank you for finding time for this important video. We want to continue our topic about depression. And last time I talked about depression shortly and I gave some message of hope for someone. And today I just want to pick from where I stopped and say that depression is real. And my objective for today is to help someone understand what depression is and where does it come from, what really causes depression. Now, quickly, I want us to answer the question, what is depression? Depression can be defined in 3 ways or even more, but I want to try to be as close to your understanding and as relevant as possible by saying, 1, depression is a state of extreme sadness. It is an extreme sadness that you cannot really explain. Yeah, I don't know. Have you been in a situation whereby you are extremely sad? Nothing makes sense anymore. Nothing can make you happy. Nothing can make you smile. Nothing can give you any feeling of joy or goodness. That one is partly an explanation, or rather a definition of depression. Number 2, we can also talk of depression as a state of emotional paralysis, a mental, emotional paralysis, whichever way you can look at it. So the word there is paralysis, is a situation, is a state where someone is not able to function. Is not able to function. In fact, I'll move to the 3rd definition, which is as a mental and emotional disability. That is depression. It can be social. It can be social, emotional, mental disability, but social is more of an outcome of the mental and the emotional disability. When you hear the word disability, is where someone is not able to do something. I said last time that you better lose a part of your body than to lose your mind, because your mind is actually everything. Now, when we look at this, we can also say it is an uncontrollable state of sadness. I'm using the word uncontrollable to show that it is not sadness that is in your control. It's not somewhere you can say, okay, I'm sad, but let me move on and do something. That is not what I mean. I mean someone is in captivity. Someone is enslaved in emotional lowness, emotional deprivation, that nothing again can really cheer you up. Now, have you been in such a situation? Do you know someone who has been in such a situation, looking at the 3 or 4 definitions that I've said? Yes, I know. It could be you. It could be someone else you know, a family member or a friend. And the worst thing about depression is that you can be depressed, yet you don't know. Yes, you can be depressed, yet you don't know, and you may need someone to help you understand that you are depressed. And because of that, therefore, we have levels of depression. We have levels of depression. We can be severely depressed, someone can be moderately depressed, and someone can be just joining the journey to depression. Someone just asked, so is depression therefore the common stress that we have? Because we are stressed like every other day. I'll say no, because as much as stress is not a good feeling, some level of stress is good for our functioning. We need some level of stress that will push us towards functioning, towards performance, towards performing our tasks day in, day out. Like now, I know most of you woke up this morning because you are stressed with something. You need to achieve something. You have needs to meet. There is economic pressure. That is all right. But when this stress becomes persistent, chronic and intense over time, it can lead one to being depressed. And that leads us to the causes of depression. What do you think causes depression? Good. Depression is caused mainly by two broad factors or causes. There can be many broken down causes, and these causes vary from one person to another because we have different abilities to cope with stress, to cope with things that cause us depression. And when I talk about these causes, therefore, I'm just mentioning the broad spectrum of it, but what causes depression in someone may not be necessarily the cause of depression on another person. So we can talk about two broad causes of depression. Number one, we talk about biological causes. Biological causes. Number two, we can talk about psychosocial or psychological and social causes. Now, talking about biological, we look at things like the biochemical elements in our body or messengers that coordinate functioning of our bodies. You understand the term neurotransmitter? Neurotransmitter, as the term suggests, is transmit neuro. So these are chemicals which help in the transmission of messages in the functioning of the brain or the neurons. And there are around 3 or 4 neurotransmitters that are commonly associated with depression. Because these hormones or neurotransmitters, they play a role in transmitting messages in our brain that at the end of the day result in some more form of emotion. Talk about dopamine. Talk about norepinephrine. Talk about epinephrine. And we have serotonin. These chemicals actually play a major role in our emotional changes. And at some point, when these levels, or the levels of these neurotransmitters are low, then you are more likely to develop depression. Because these are hormones which play a role in giving you a good feeling. I'm now speaking, literally, because I'm addressing a diverse audience and we have people who may not be so medical. So these hormones, or neurotransmitters, when they are released, they give us a feeling of goodness. Talk about dopamine, talk about serotonin. So when you feel good, happy, jovial, there is the role of these hormones behind. And these are things happening in our bodies that we cannot basically see. Now, when the levels of these neurotransmitters go low, then of course now depression is likely to come in. And that's why in the drugs that we use in treating patients with depression, most of them, they mimic the function of these neurotransmitters because they try to potentiate or to play the function that these neurotransmitters play, so that at least there is now a restoration of that good feeling. So that is point one. And point two, I talked about psychosocial factors. Now, we are social beings and things happen to us. And these things that happen to us, they are interpreted in our psychology, in our minds, and the way we perceive them, there is a message that, of course, is developed out of that, and of course that will determine on how we react to these occurrences or events. Now, there are 3 classifications of the psychosocial causes of depression. There are many, but I'm compressing to 3 because I know these 3 will encompass all that we really talk about. Number 1, we talk about major loss. Major loss. Anytime someone loses something major, when I talk about major, something that is really significant in someone's life, then this person is likely to develop depression. What is this loss? What's this major loss? Talk about loss of life. Maybe someone loses a significant person, a husband, a wife, a child, someone close to him. So that death becomes one of the major losses. Then when we talk about a major loss, again, here we can talk about loss of property. Talk about someone who loses a job, like this difficult time. Most people have lost jobs, and if they are not really managing themselves well, or they are not managed well, of course, we are going to see serious cases. Now, loss of a job, loss of property, talk about loss of land, for example, loss of money, and anything that someone holds dear to his life, something valuable, something that is worthy someone's life. So that can be a serious cause of depression. And then we talk about loss. Even losing your health can be a major cause of depression. Maybe someone is diagnosed with a terminal illness. Someone is in a state of sickness that brings about hopelessness. So chances are very high that this person, unless cared for, unless well attended to, unless something is done, someone is likely to develop depression. Now, that is in terms of loss. Point 2 under psychosocial factors that cause depression is what we call abuse. The issue of abuse, whether it's physical abuse or emotional abuse or some form of abuse that you know, if this is done intensely, repeatedly, and someone is not able to get out of that situation, then of course depression is inevitable. Talk about in a marriage setting, for example, where someone is constantly abused emotionally, constantly abused physically, even constantly abused sexually, and another form of abuse. Look at a child, for example, who grows in an abusive environment, an abusive home or family, and of course, even in school or in institutions where there is constant abuse. It can be even at workplace where employees are under constant abuse from the employer or from colleagues. Then chances are high that someone will, at the end of the day, develop some form of depression. And point number 3 in that order is unmet expectation. Unmet expectations can also be a major cause of depression. Look at someone who has set goals, which we do day to day, and you expected something to happen, and you of course invest in that expectation, and then the outcome is contrary to the expectation. And sometimes we even have expectations on people. You expect them to do something for you or to you, then the things happen in the contrary. And under this met, there are people, when they set their goals, they really want to achieve them, and they do everything to do that. You do an exam, for example, examination. I know our boys and girls are sitting their examination, and the KCPE examination are just concluded. Now, someone has been performing well and expects to get an A plane, and then here comes a B plane. I know that unmet expectation can be extremely devastating, extremely traumatizing. So all of these forms of trauma, they come from those 3 things I've mentioned. Number 1, major loss. Number 2, abuse. Number 3, unmet expectations. Now, having looked at that, and because today I just wanted us to be aware of these things, I want you to stay put and watch my next video and be able to learn on how you can identify someone who is depressed. We'll talk about signs and symptoms of depression, and we'll also talk about how do we manage depression. But all these things we have talked today, I know they might have happened to one or all of us, and at such times you have been really depressed. You felt a feeling of hopelessness, a feeling of low energy, a feeling of disability. You can't do anything. Don't lose hope. Watch my next video. You will learn more, and I know that at the end of the day, you will stand stronger than before. God bless you. See you next time.